They brought in military personnel who had a scope to look at this grenade from a distance and said it was real.
We were all on standby because either the guy was going to pull the pin or we were going to have it end peacefully.
I never experienced anything like that, and I guess it wasn't until I got home and thought about it that I went, wow, that was a different day at the office. Kind of.
I was the emergency physician on duty, and I can remember the nurse came up to me and was whispering something. She had a paper chart in her hand, and what she was actually telling me was this guy has a grenade, but I couldn't hear her. I thought she wanted me to go and see the patient right away. So I did, and I went into the room, and there's this fellow sitting there, and he has a World War II style hand grenade strapped to his belt. And he says, "I'm going to blow this place up unless you get me to see my wife." I'm going, well, that's an unusual chief complaint. So I said, okay, well, let me figure out what I'm going to do.
So there was no administrative person except me in the organization, and I got a call from emergency saying that there's a man in emergency that has a grenade.
One of the nurses from the cubicle area just basically pushed open the door and she says, "Evacuate immediately." And it's funny, I just, okay. And just as I was pulling patients and stretchers out of Emerge down the hall to get away, the Nepean Police were coming through the door. This man had phoned them and said he was going to Queensway Carleton with a grenade, and he was going to explode it if he didn't get to see his wife and child, who he was separated from and who were in Kingston.
The sergeant on the scene was asking me all kinds of questions, and I didn't have the answer to them. I just thought getting out of there was probably the most appropriate thing to do at the time. So he asked me to go back in and ask all of these questions for him. So I did. Part of it was getting the information the police need to identify him and to figure out how to find the wife. Also, part of it was to try to diffuse him a little bit. He wasn't outwardly agitated. In fact, he was quite calm the entire time. He was just very insistent that we find his wife and bring her to him. So I gave the police all of the information that they needed, and we proceeded to evacuate the emergency department.
And so then it was sort of me plus emergency trying to figure out what was the best plan.
We were in that one room and it was kind of say, okay, we got these patients to deal with now. I remember much of them had to be admitted to hospitals, so we had to admit them without paperwork, which was unique.
It was kind of a scary time because they had to shut the ORs down and everything. They didn't know what was going to happen. We were evacuating the building as much as we could. But
I think we had evacuated in under 2 minutes. It was phenomenal.
They had expertise to say how many feet away, if in fact this exploded, how many feet away would it take out the organization. So we had to alert the operating room to subsequently say no more ORs, finish what you've got, but no more ORs till we sort this out. And then other people such as the lab and X-ray had to basically have stopped their treatment and move on.
There was a point where a SWAT member had a high-powered rifle aimed at him, and he actually had a microphone in his trigger. And I heard him say, "Do you want me to take a shot at him? I've got a clean shot." And I told the sergeant, there's oxygen behind those walls. I'm not sure if you want to be shooting a rifle in there. And so they chose not to do that, actually. So we were able to diffuse the situation peacefully.
I was coming on the evening shift, and this had happened around noon, so they told us to come in. We had to go through special security to come into the building, and we were sent to a special room about in the old day stay unit, which was way down the hall from the emergency. And we were standing there with police, and they were radioing back and forth to let us know whether to take cover or whether we were going to be going back to the emergency. And once we were freed, we all came back, and there was a big cleanup to do with getting the police and the SWAT team and everybody out of there and opening up the building again and getting us back on track for the rest of the evening shift.
At the end of the day, they brought in his wife and daughter to the door. They certainly didn't bring them in the building, so he could talk to them that way, and he finally surrendered.
It was really very stressful, for sure, because no one had experienced that. Lots of press, trying to manage the press.
That was the day Chretien was going to be sworn in as Prime Minister. And all of a sudden, we realized there was every news company outside on the driveway leading into the hospital. Couldn't understand how these big trucks come in there so quickly. And then somebody said, "Oh, well, Chretien is being sworn in, and you've taken his publicity away from him."
I wondered if the grenade was a dud the whole time, and I never knew what happened. And probably about 30 years later, I actually met the same police officer in the emergency department. He was there with his wife at the time, and he said, "Are you Dr. Falconer? Are you the guy that was with the grenade?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "You know that was a live grenade?" And I said, "No, I never actually knew that, and I think I was happy not knowing that."
We debriefed after and basically found that we had done a reasonably good job of this, but once again, that's sort of an unpredictable thing that comes up that you just don't know how to manage, but we managed beautifully, so it worked out well.